And the duel is one moment where he does sort of step in and try to do something about it. But that's what makes it so out of character for him. Hello, and welcome back to a very special episode of No Script, an unscripted conversation about theater's best scripts. I'm Jacob. I am here with Jackson, and we're happy to welcome you to the last episode of the season.
Yes, we have had a delightful season full of many good discussions and grateful for the time we've had. We do take our typical summer break starting next week. And we'll be back before too long with a brand new season as well. But this is the kind of moment when we take a deep breath, reset, and get things ready for the next one. So don't worry, we'll be back soon, but we will be taking a break for a little bit.
But we have one more conversation before that break comes about, and it is about an awesome. They call it an opera. I guess because it's sung through and it has some kind of elevated stylings, but it's really this musical opera theater project like hits so many cylinders for me. In terms of being adaptation work, in terms of having kind of a theatrical narrative element, in terms of having this really high concept, inventive, original staging, in terms of the kinds of things it does with familiar like IP, quote unquote, or maybe even sort of less familiar IP as the years goes on. Today, of course, we are talking about Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812 by Dave Malloy.
Yes, excited for the conversation today. It is like such a vibrant play, right? Like as you even in the reading and the listening of it, but certainly if you've seen any production footage of it or got the chance to see it back when it was on the many versions of off Broadway to Broadway that it was on, the show was like so full of life and so integrated into the audience experience. So I'm excited for the conversation today, and it's sort of like the weirdness that is always true of any musical, of like so much of this play is being in the room with the people doing the play.
Well, yeah, and especially, the original productions of Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812 had this very stylized presentation where there were actor musicians. The audience was brought into this kind of immersive environment, which they describe as kind of like a Russian samovar meets New York City nightclub kind of environment. And in, typical immersive style, the scenes took place kind of throughout the audience where they were gathered. In the foreword to the copy of the script I have, the original director talks about talking with Dave Malloy and working on that original production. And one of the things that Malloy talked about was being in Russia and going to see this I think it was like a trio, a musical trio in Russia, where he sat like really close to the violinist or the viola player or whoever, and that being that close to this musician who had totally enthralled and enraptured the audience is part of what inspired him to this kind of creation, and then it goes on to inspire that original production where the musicians and the actor musicians are sat all throughout the audience. So different depending on where you sat, you had a different auditory experience, a different experience of the music. If you were sitting next to the bass player or the accordion player, obviously those parts of the music would be highly exaggerated in your live experience of it. So it really does, at least in the way the original production was, capture aliveness, like a being present in the room is a totally unique experience that you can't get anywhere else.
Yep. And so replicable, right? Because you could go to it 3-4 times and see a very different play based on where you're sitting and based on what sort of cinematic moment you are right next to. So yeah, it's such a great play, great songs. Excited to have the chance to chat about it today because it's been one of those plays that sort of floated in my periphery for a very long time. Like I saw the images, saw the trailers and stuff like that, and just never really had the chance to engage it. So excited to have the chance to do so today.
Yeah, I think it'll be a blast. It's going to be one of those that's hard to talk about.
For sure.
The
We have our work cut
plot
out for us.
is notoriously intricate. In fact,
Yep.
that's part of the joke of the musical in some ways, or the joke of the musical, whatever that means. And then it's also, and we don't do a great job in general talking about the music of a piece. And the music of this piece is highly complicated in
Yeah.
its styling and its presentation. It'll be a challenge, but one that I've been eager to do because I just love this piece. It does it for me.
But hey, before we jump into the conversation today, I want to say thank you to all of our patrons over at patreon.com/noscriptpodcast for making this show happen, especially on the auspiciousness of the last episode of the season. Thank you all so much for being sure that we get to do things like chat about this play, like chat about Paula Vogel for a whole month, invite special guests onto the show. There's been so many great conversations. The patrons over at patreon.com/noscriptpodcast make it happen. So thank you all so much. On these auspicious days of usually the first and last episodes of the seasons, and sometimes spread out in between as well, we like to thank all of our patrons at the playwright tier, which is one of the tiers of patronship that you can find over at patreon.com/noscriptpodcast. So Jacob, who do we have to thank today?
We are very excited to thank for supporting this podcast, for making this podcast happen. This wonderful group of folks: Kyle and Lisa Tenholzen, Brennan Soar, David Lindsay Aber, Roger Hartley, Joanna Lawler, Albert Dayan, Krista Savory Dunn, Brock Borick. We also have Christopher Scott. We have David Miller. We have Paul Hopkins. We have Natasha. We have Janine Sternlieb. That wonderful group of folks, again, are at the playwright tier or higher, and they are just a fabulous team. Everybody who supports us over there are a fabulous team. You make doing the podcast possible. Huge shout out to you. Thanks so much for this great season and for the season to come.
Yes, thank you all so much. And if you are looking for a way to help out the show or just be involved in a different and interesting way with the No Script community, you can head on over to patreon.com/noscriptpodcast, and we will see you over there.
And now back to the script.
Here we go.
Dave Malloy, new playwright to the podcast. Playwright, but also composer, lyricist, actor, orchestrator. He does a lot. This is a musical-sided person, and so he typically wears a lot of hats. But in this case, the whole project is conceived by Dave Malloy. He has done other work, as we'll talk about, where he's just the lyricist or the composer, and there are book writers. In this case, there's not a book. There's just the lyrics and music. It's a sung-through opera. But because he's new, just want to give you a brief introduction to Dave Malloy. Dave studied music composition and English literature at Ohio University. That sounds right for doing Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. And Ohio University will come back in the context section just briefly. Goes on to work on theater in San Francisco, and gets involved with a lot of kind of early projects, including early on composing the music for Beowulf, 1,000 Years of Baggage. Some other works that you might recognize of Dave's: Ghost Quartet is probably his most commonly known other work besides this, which, this particular piece that we're talking about today is a smash hit and certainly has made his career in a lot of ways. He's also been part of projects like Preludes, Octet, Three Houses. Recently, he's worked on Moby Dick musical, which sounds like it's kind of in the same waters. Haha, very good pun, Jacob.
Hey.
Of Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. I'm excited about that. I'd like to see it. But also, this month, coming out May 2026, his musical production, his musical adaptation of Black Swan, like the movie with Natalie Portman, is out. The book for that is by Jen Silverman. Jen Silverman, Dave Malloy working on a stage adaptation of Black Swan. Wow. I gotta tell you, there's no way in the world I could have predicted that. That was not even on my radar. Yeah. Crazy.
Man, that'd be cool to see, though.
Yeah, I know. I'm just jazzed about it. All right, on to the show for today. This, Natasha, Pierre the Great Comet of 1812. If you don't know, this is an adaptation of Tolstoy's, 1869 novel, War and Peace. So it is It is obviously heavily referenced to that material. That novel has massive impact worldwide. It's one of those novels that people ask, have you read War and Peace? It's long, it's huge, it's sprawling, it's got an untold number of characters and an untold number of storylines and threads. So how do you adapt War and Peace to the stage? Well, the answer is that you don't. And
Right.
that's not really what Dave Malloy did. Apparently, Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812 is an adaptation of, like, depending on the translation, like a 60 or 70 page slice of the novel. It's just this short little story that takes place inside of this massive, sprawling, kind of world shaking novel. It premieres at Ars Nova in New York City in 2012. Ars Nova is a company that's really about experimental new pieces getting their feet in New York City. And apparently at the time, this project was like the biggest project they'd ever undertaken in terms of the sheer size and scope of what was going on. It got rave reviews. And so Philippa Sue and Dave Malloy himself were in that original Ars Nova production. This was long before Hamilton. I've got a whole other diatribe I could get on about that, but I won't in this episode, I don't think. Philippa Sue and Dave Malloy were playing Natasha and Pierre, who I'm sure Jackson will tell you about. They end up transferring then with the show off Broadway to Casino in the Meatpacking District in 2013, which my understanding was like a tent theater production. And then it goes on to have another off-Broadway production in a formal off-Broadway house. It also has a production at the American Repertory Theater in Cambridge in 2015. Then it has its Broadway run at the Imperial Theater in 2016. This is where Danae Benton and Josh Groban join the show. And so that, if you're listening to the Broadway cast recording, which is the popular recording, Josh Groban is the person you're hearing sing Pierre, and he joins at this time for the Broadway production. It has lots of other regional theater productions. The Tantrum Theater in 2022, which is Tantrum Theater is the professional theater that is attached to Ohio University, which again, that's Dave Malloy's alma mater. So his alma mater does a production in 2022. There's also a production at the Capital City Theater in Wisconsin, the West Coast premiere at the Shotgun Players in Berkeley. 2023, it's again at American Rep. It's at Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, Idaho Shakespeare Festival, Great Lakes Theater in Cleveland. 2024, it has its UK premiere at the Donmer Warehouse. It's in the Horizon Theater Company in Atlanta, the Zach Theater in Austin, the Arvada Center for the Arts in Colorado, Seacoast Rep in New Hampshire, Signet Theater in San Diego, Pioneer Theater in Salt Lake City, Writers Theater in Illinois. The University of Virginia and University of Michigan both produced it just this spring, April 2026. It's also had international productions in Ecuador, Brazil, Japan, Korea, Canada, Australia, China, New Zealand, and now to end the season with one of my favorite reoccurring segments on No Scripted Podcast. Here's the upcoming productions according to the Concord Theatricals website. In May of 2026, if you are in the Lake Worth area of Florida, you can see this at 360 Theater School. It is also at Between the Bars Theater in Cambridge, early 2027. Summer 2026 is at Children's Theater of Charlotte. It's at Commonwealth Artists Students Theater in Kentucky, DePaul University at Indiana, Ever After Productions in Hertfordshire. This is now 2027 Productions, Gordon College in Massachusetts, Lebanon Valley College in Pennsylvania, Manhattan School of Music in New York, Montverde Academy in Florida, and many others besides. This is, nothing short of a smash hit, sweep the nation and the world kind of musical experience. The Broadway production did get 12 Tony nominations, 2 wins. It also received Obie Awards and Richard Rodgers Awards in 2013, 3 Lucille Lortel Awards in 2014. It had 5 Drama Desk nominations. Just an all-time great project that I can only imagine has a long life to come.
Yes, for sure. Excited to catch one of those productions pretty soon because, it'd be fun to be in the room with this play for sure. Gonna give us just a short summary of this play, which, is interesting that like I think actually will be short because the like actual
Well, now don't say
I
that.
curse myself whenever I say it, but like the action of this play is pretty succinct. The play centers on 19th century Russia, specifically Moscow. This is sort of right before or right in the midst, really, of the Napoleonic Wars. So you can kind of maybe track where we are in history a little bit. 1812 is obviously in the title
Big
of the
year for
play.
America, but
Yeah, yep.
kind of a different thing in Russia.
For sure. Um, and we're focused on this kind of complicated family drama that happens. There's two great lines from the prologue of this play that get repeated often, and they really set you up. So I'm just going to read them real quick. The first line is, "There's a war going on out there somewhere, and Andre isn't here." Now, Andre is betrothed to Natasha. Andre is from the Bolkonsky family, and Natasha is from the Rostrova family, and so they're kind of joining their family. They're both royalty of some degree. It seems like Andre is like prince level, and Natasha is more like I think it's countess, but that's not the right word. Different level. So exciting marriage for both their families. However, their betrothal has happened, and Andre left for the war. So Natasha has gone to Moscow to live with Maria, a relative of hers, with her friend Sonia, to kind of wait for Andre to come home. Alongside of that, she is also trying to kind of win the favor of Andre's family, old Prince Bolkonsky, and Mary, who is Andre's sister. So that's kind of why Natasha is in Moscow. In the midst of that, though, she is kind of introduced to Russian society in Moscow. She's kind of brought to various operas and things, and at one of those operas, she meets Anatole. Now, Anatole is married to Helene, or no, I'm sorry, is the brother of Helene. And so they're kind of like these ne'er-do-wells about Moscow, well known for their dashing and romances that kind of continue, which is sort of a scandal because they are both married. Anatole is married to someone who is off stage for the whole play, but Helene...
Anatole's married secretly. I think he hasn't told anybody. It seems like he's been forced into the marriage with a peasant girl somehow, and he keeps that on the down low because the revelation that he's married really changes the story at the end of the musical.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And however, his sister Helene is well known to be married, and is
not
married,
a secret.
and is married to the other title character of our play, Pierre. Now, Pierre is kind of this Russian archetype, a little bit of this thinker. He's kind of in this existential moment of he's going through this moment of his life where he's getting a little bit older, and he's grappling with that. He's grappling with the fact that his wife isn't faithful to him in sort of a well-known fashion. And so like he kind of ends up staying home from parties often to kind of study, to philosophize, and notably to drink. And so like he and his friends sort of know that they can go to him for philosophy, for drinking, and interestingly for money. So Anatole especially frequently goes and visits Pierre and gets funds for the evening from him. And so there's kind of this ongoing friendship between them, even as Pierre has kind of removed himself from a lot of society. On this opera night that Natasha is introduced into society, Anatole and Natasha meet, and Anatole at least falls for Natasha from across the room, and slowly over the course of the night wins her over in some way or another, seduces her perhaps, courts her quickly across the evening, ending in a kiss, and kind of destabilizes a lot of what Natasha is thinking she is here in Moscow for. So she's kind of dealing with the if we kissed, that must mean we're in love. Natasha is notably kind of occupying this archetype of the kind of young lover. And so she's unpacking and kind of actively deconstructing what romance is in the midst of feeling these feelings. And for both Andre, who is away, and for Anatole, who is here. And so in the midst of all that, Anatole says he's going to marry her and take her away. And so he hatches this plan for an elopement. Now, there's a number of other things happening along the way. There's a character called Dolokhov, who is with Helene, and he gets in a duel with Pierre at one point. There's some bad blood there. But Dolokhov ends up helping Anatole hatch this plot to elope with Natasha. Sonia, again, the friend of Natasha who came to Moscow with her, finds out about this plot and tells Maria, their host, about it. And so Maria stops them in the act of the elopement and basically kidnapping of Natasha, and stops it from happening, and ends up going to Pierre and saying, this is going on. Can you help us deal with the problem that Anatole is like kind of actively pursuing Natasha and wanting to steal her away? Now, Pierre is one who knows that Anatole is married. And so he right away goes into a little bit more of a rage around it, finds Anatole, tells him he needs to burn all the letters and leave Moscow. Anatole says he will do it if he basically pays him to do it, and he runs off to Petersburg. That leaves Natasha here in Moscow, and having been told that Anatole was married, Pierre tells Maria, who tells Natasha that Anatole is married. She takes a dose of arsenic and tries to poison herself. Unsuccessfully, she manages to survive. But she is kind of in this moment of like, everything is ruined. She says that she has already written Mary and let her know that she is breaking off her engagement to Andre. So she's kind of spinning out as she tries to figure out what on earth she's going to do. In the midst of this, Andre emerges, having returned from the war, and meets not with Natasha, but with Pierre, and tells him that, like, I have all of her letters here, and I'm like, it's, maybe a bigger person could forgive, but I am not going to. I am not able to do that. And so kind of coldly gives the letters over to Pierre and leaves, saying that he will not continue to pursue Natasha, even as he now understands Pierre explains the whole situation to him, and he says, okay, I'm out. I'm not going to do it. So Andre is off again. The play close to ends with Pierre going to Natasha and explaining the situation with her, and kind of notes the kind of spin out that she is in, and sort of it'd be interesting to have a conversation about like where Pierre is at with this, but certainly in words says that, like, if I were the best man and if I were free, not married to Helene, I would ask for your hand, and kind of gives this encouragement of like, your whole life is still before you. You don't have to end here. There is more out there, and kind of offers that encouragement to Natasha, who in the lyrics leaves with a smile on her face. The kind of like epilogue, perhaps, or the scene after that sort of big meeting between our two title characters, because they don't meet for the whole play until then, is Pierre walking home and kind of reflecting on what has happened, both like within the course of the play, but also for him, who has gone from this kind of existential moment of like, I don't have anything really to live for. I'm trying to find something to live for. Is there a way that I can be what I was before as I get older, as I like am stuck in this marriage that isn't working for me? And he, as he is walking home, sees the Great Comet of 1812 arcing overhead, and kind of like has this moment of enlightenment, and kind of wonders at it and at humanity's spot in the world, as a very philosophical wondering, and that kind of, along with the ensemble that sings with him at the end of the play, is the last moment of the play as he is out on the street watching the comet soar overhead.
Yeah, boy, I want to just read this sentence from the foreword from, again, the original director, Rachel Chavkin, of that original world premiere production. She's describing Dave Malloy coming to her, asking her if she's read War and Peace, bringing her on to the project that he's working on, this adaptation of this, again, depending on your translation, very short slice. Again, War and Peace, very, very long novel. In fact, if it's famous for anything, it's probably for its length.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It is a substantial piece of work, and he's set out to adapt it, but just to adapt this little sliver of it. And so she describes it this way. Dave strongly identified with Pierre, the supernaturally large, painfully awkward but beloved illegitimate son of the wealthiest man in Russia. At a pivotal point in the center of the novel, Pierre, aimless and trapped in a terrible marriage, finds new purpose via the downfall of Natasha. In helping to save the reputation of this innocent young woman, he saves himself. This unfolds in a 60-page sliver to which Dave had become particularly attached. So there's some relationship being drawn, and I like that you described that scene at the end of the play. We Natasha and Pierre have not been in a scene together throughout.
Yeah.
For the musical being called Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812, this is the only scene that they share. They really are in separate storylines, which get drawn together in some part because Pierre is the draw together of these parts of the family in a way that Natasha is as well. Pierre is somehow longtime friends with Natasha's family. He describes knowing her when she was a little girl and watching her grow up. He's obviously much older than her in that way. And he is also, Helene, his wife, is, as you say, Anatole's sister. So Anatole is his brother-in-law. And so he has this relationship with Natasha's family and this familial relationship with Anatole and Helene and that whole group of them. And so Natasha does that too by virtue of, getting... falling in love and getting in this relationship with Anatole too. So there are these two characters that are both pulling together these two families, and their particular wanderings, these sort of, you use the word existential a bunch, these crises that they're in the middle of happen to sort of coincide at the same moment, and somehow they rescue each other is the kind of, grand but small way to say what happens in this musical.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. I don't know opera really well, so I'm going to use some words that I don't really understand. So I'm going so forgive me if anyone actually knows the correct words, but sort of the arias or the songs that both Natasha and Pierre have that are their standalone songs. They're kind of I want songs, or they're like in the midst of trying to figure out the difficulties of their situations. Both of them name something very close along the lines of what you're talking about, Jacob, of like these solutions that the other one ends up offering for each other, right? Because Pierre has purpose in that he knows and has all the connections to make this scandal go away for Natasha. And Natasha has and his connection to Natasha gives him something to work for, to live for, a purpose for him to direct his philosophy and his posture in life. And so there is like this, like the two of them together, though they have not met for probably 10, 15 years or whatever the time is, do have this sort of like running alongside each other and eventually crossing paths, that certainly serves each other and what each other needs in the world.
Well, right, and once the attempted abduction, the attempted elopement, whatever, transpires, and they're found out, they're betrayed by Sonia, and they're sent to, and all this stuff happens with Natasha. The rest of the musical, whatever's left of it, 20% or something, is really scenes in which Pierre tries on the back end to solve this problem for Natasha. He meets with sort of person after person in this sequence, trying to essentially save her reputation, is what this comes down to. She has spurned the engagement with a very wealthy and influential family in Russia, and she has been sort of scandalously in this illicit relationship with a married man. And if she's a young woman and her economic future, and she feels that her hope in life is tied to being married to a man. This is obviously a heavily patriarchal society, and certainly some of what is going on in this musical is like, what happens when you trap people in these systems of money and power. But that is her situation, or that's what she feels her situation is. So Pierre is trying at once to essentially cover everything up, try to get
Yeah.
him, try to get the guy out of the city, and try to preserve the secrets as secrets. He also has a scene with Andre where, as you described, he tries to get him to forgive her and to take Natasha back, given that that's sort of their best hope. And the other thing that they're worried about is that Andre and Natasha's father and her other male family members may have to duel Anatole, because of whatever, because they have to for honor, and he's disgraced to their family or whatever. And I think that's one of the reasons why the duel is included earlier in the musical with Pierre, which is kind of an odd side quest in this musical, the duel that doesn't kill anybody. But there is this very real danger that Natasha's family members will be killed, and Andre might be killed in a duel over what Natasha has chosen to do and things like that. So there's like the very real danger, and then there is the reputational, sort of safety and secure future danger, which Pierre is trying to deal with somehow. But Pierre is, that was a long-winded way to get to this. Pierre is like the unlikeliest of heroes.
Yeah.
And that's really what this musical does, is set up Pierre as this awkward, strange, very shy and introverted kind of scholarly figure who's in his own existential crisis about the nature of his life in Russia. He is not the person who's going to sit down these men of action and tell them what they have to do and threaten them and all this stuff. He's not a hero, and he is pushed by the nature of his relationships to step in and try to work on behalf of Natasha, a person we have not seen him in a scene with all play.
Yeah, he's set up as this sort of like recluse, certainly from like an old narrative structure, right? His wife is cheating on him, so there's like little things to
and
like learn.
The other thing is that it is clear that part of his like emasculated, quiet, shy person is that his wife is cheating on him, and he knows about it and refuses to do anything about it. And the duel is one moment where he does sort of step in and try to do something about it. But that's what makes it so out of character for him. He knows that she cheats on him. He talks with people about it, and he seems to be more or less resigned to it.
Right. Yeah. So he's certainly set up as this person, not a man of action. And interestingly, this play sort of tracks him slowly breaking in that. I think that would be a way, I think you've already sort of said this, the justification of that duel is kind of noting that like Pierre is on a like approaching a fed up moment, and something is going to happen.
Something is the key, like, because the other thing that happens in the duel, which it only happens in stage direction, so it's an action moment on stage, is that once he fires his shot, he essentially spreads his arms and bares his chest and walks towards the guy he's dueling. So it's essentially a suicidal moment.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you sort of get the sense that he's going to do something about his stuckness. And what that something is, he's navigating what exactly that's going to be. You definitely get like there's again in some of the ways that the scenes start, they find him essentially passed out at home, drinking a lot. He talks about like he gets through at least a whole bottle, and the sort of like the way that he is living life is leading to at least a decision, if not an end of some sort. And so like this moment finds him and kind of calls him into a different way of engaging his life.
And this moment that he has with Natasha at the end is, I find it really moving. And I've not seen this live, so my only experience is in listening to the music and in reading it many times. And what essentially happens, again, this is a sung through opera. And there's other like very small spoken, I mean, they're like, come here, or go do that. I mean, they're not really lines. They're sort of additions to the moment. But this is really the only spoken line in the play is he's gone to Natasha. Natasha has said that her life, all of her life is over for her because of what she's done and the implications for her reputation and her sort of secure future. And the music stops is the stage direction. The music stops, and Pierre says, if I were not myself, but the brightest, handsomest, best man on earth, and if I were free, I would get down on my knees this minute and ask you for your hand and for your love. Music resumes. It is I find it a very touching moment in both like form and content. The having it be the one moment, no music, a simple spoken line. And if you listen to Groban's performance in the recording, it takes forever too. I mean, he doesn't just say it; he speaks it. Like he starts and stops many times. I mean, it's in some ways, it's like as a director, you're always trying to get your actors not to pause. In some ways,
Right.
you listen and you're like, "This is quite a bit of pausing here, Groban."
Yeah.
But it is the silence is so much. I mean, so much of Malloy's orchestration and compositions here. The music is huge.
Yeah.
It's so present and driving, and there's accordions and strings and noise, 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 noise. And I think a lot of what's happening is setting up this moment.
Yeah.
Natasha and Pierre find the title characters finally in a room together. Everything stops. And you get this one beautifully spoken line. I assume this is something of a direct quote. And again, War and Peace is written in Russian, so you're quoting from an English translation. But it's really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. I think the musical treats in this sort of like frenetic
Yes, frenetic
pace.
is a great word.
And it's always in your face in like cool ways, like the way that it's staged. The actors are weaving through all the aisles of the theater, and there's a audience on stage at tables with them being acted with occasionally. And so it is this full court press the whole show, and it certainly evokes what Natasha is going through coming to Moscow for the first time. And there is this stop that happens, like what happens when we just stop for a second and realize. And the lines prior are all about her saying like, my life is over, don't even talk to me, I'm not worth it. And Pierre is like singing stop, 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 but she says it's all over for me, and he stops the action. He says all over, and the music stops, and we get this. I agree there are long pauses, but I think I absolutely agree that it's set up because of the pace of the rest of the play. And it is this sort of like, oh, deep breath, find your center again, and yes, there is a way forward.
Well, and I don't think, and I could be wrong with this, and in some ways we're talking about the novel too, which many, many brighter people than me have talked about the novel, but I don't get the sense that this is a romantic gesture. Like, I don't believe really that Pierre is saying, I'm in love with you and I would like to marry you, but I can't. He's much older than her now. Again, in these old novels, that's not necessarily
Right.
Something that would prevent them from being together. But I to me, this is more about the vulnerability, the reaching out to say, you're still an incredible young person. You still have this moment ahead of you. Like, I don't think we're meant to read this as Pierre's declaration that all along he's been in love with her. I don't think that's what's going on.
It would be sort of odd if that was if that was the read, right? Like, never have seen her moment. You know, it'd be a sort of like a moment of love at first sight, which has happened before in this play, I guess. But I think there's more romanticism than romance around this. Sort of the awakening of feelings for. I think Pierre does feel something like love for Natasha, and notes that it cannot happen. And sort of notes even in telling her that it will not happen.
Well, but it's strange too, right? Because the other thing that Pierre, particularly as the person intervening in this moment, has that other characters don't have is he has an unfaithful wife,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is essentially what Natasha has done. That's the problem with her
Mm-hmm.
reputation. Is she was engaged to Andre and she decided to elope with another man. At the very beginning of this scene, Pierre is coming in and he finds her in the room and he describes her standing there and looking so upset. And then he gets this line of narration. And we got to have time to talk about the narration. But he sings and it's all sung. So he sings this line of narration. Pierre sniffed as he looked at her but didn't speak. Till then he had reproached her and had tried to despise her, but now he felt such pity for her that there was no room in his soul for reproach. So Pierre has beyond being the person that ties, or one of the people that tie together these two family groups, he also has, I mean, that's why he goes to Andre, right? What he says to Andre is, "You've always told me I should forgive my
Right.
wife for cheating on
Mm-hmm.
me all the time. Well, now I give the same back to you." I mean,
Yeah.
he has a particular lived experience that is interesting to this situation.
Yeah, that allows him to speak into it in a particular way. And so like the advice to continue comes from a really sort of like, maybe not, certainly not knowing the whole of Natasha's experience, but like
Right.
portions of the experience. He's like, I get this. And there is a way for you forward.
Yeah, and it's written in the first person, right? He says, "If I were not my," but really, another way of reading what he's saying is like, you deserve the brightest, handsomest, best man on earth. You
Mm-hmm.
still deserve that. And if it were me, I would still be happy to be with you. Yeah, but there is this other, like, the other thing about what he's saying there, right, is that he's not.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? It's all, he is, yeah, I am not the brightest, handsomest, best man on earth.
And I
So
am
there's
not
also
free.
this, and I'm not free. So there's
Yeah.
also this part of Pierre, his, whatever his problem is that he takes a step towards in this musical, is also in that sense of why it's such a brilliantly written little sentence, because it acknowledges both things: his poor sense of himself and his sense that even though his wife is unfaithful to him,
Mm-hmm.
he is not going to be unfaithful to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or something along those lines, right? Because like the comet song at the end, he sort of like claims what has changed for him in this moment. The kind of last line, the last stanzas of the play are, "It seems to me that this comet feels me, feels my softened and uplifted soul and my newly melted heart, now blossoming into a new life." So there is something, a new life is starting, and like we don't really get to know. Maybe I should go read War and Peace and see what happens to him. But but like
That's our next podcast. Jackson and Jacob read War and Peace one chapter at a time.
A no script podcast.
Hey, I'm in. I'll do it.
I am.
Yeah. Well, and just to wrap this up, something about this moment changes both of them in a profound way. And we don't really get Natasha's side of that change. Again, we talked earlier in our conversation, Pierre's sort of sneakily the main character.
Right, yeah.
You spend a lot of time in the musical with Natasha, but the musical's "I Want" song, its second song in the musical, is Pierre's, and the musical's conclusion is Pierre's change. Pierre's sort of sneakily the protagonist and main character of the show. And I love that it's subtle. Musicals don't often trade in subtlety as a kind of general rule. And so I think 10 people could watch this scene in this musical and have a slightly different way of articulating what has changed for these characters and why the moment is so important. And I just think that's beautiful.
For sure. Yeah, the way and certainly the way that tone is added to that stopped line when you finally deliver a line with no music under it. There's so much fun stuff to play with as an actor with that. So yeah, so many ways it can go.
So, okay, narration wise, Malloy has kept a ton of narration, like true prose written in the third person style narration. The characters do like narrate for themselves occasionally. So like Natasha, here's a line early, will say, "My cheeks are glowing from the cold," but it's unclear whether those are like lines that they're saying they're written in the first person, which means there's in some way an adaptation of the text. But there's also lines like this. This is, as far as I can tell, the first one in the musical, from when Natasha and Sonia arrive at Maria's place, their aunt's place in Moscow. And Natasha is describing how they're so pleased to be with her. We were waiting on their fiancés. The aunt is saying how they're gonna take them out for new dresses and all these fancy parties in Moscow they're gonna go through. And Natasha says, "My cheeks are glowing from the cold." Sonia says, "She said," gazing at Maria with kind, glittering eyes. So in this case, Sonia is narrating in the third person for Natasha's way of speaking. You get that a ton of times through the show. There are these additions. They're not even really narrating action. That is what is interesting to me about them. They're adding the kind of description of subtext, of emotion, of facial expression that you often get in prose, because you don't have a real person to watch. You only have words. So authors have to give you these sort of rich descriptions of the words. And I don't know, it's a fascinating edition, I guess.
Yeah, it sort of approaches it's not quite like, it's certainly not story theater, but there's a piece of that in there. It sort of like has this moment of,
it does become story theater later. Story theater typically just means characters narrate for themselves. We are going to talk about that in a minute. That one is not necessarily, but it is, and it isn't even descriptions of action either. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that it like sort of it grounds us in the source material in a really interesting way, and it like allows what is a very complicated plot to be explained in the moment a little bit. Like
But I want to push back on that, because that one is not describing the plot at all. And that's what I is so weird to me about weird in a good way, about the narration, because when you're adapting prose, you often sometimes have to deal with the fact that prose can cover a lot more story at once than drama can. So sometimes narration is just a way to speedily move through the story, because it's much harder to do in drama to move that quickly through things. But these are not like this again, what I think is the first one. Natasha says, "My cheeks are glowing from the cold." Sonia, "She said, gazing at Maria with kind, glittering eyes." Like, in some ways, that's doing the opposite. It's not speeding us more fully through the story. It's actually slowing us down. And bringing our attention to what really could be an acting beat, right? Like, Natasha could just say that while she's gazing at Maria with kind, glittering eyes, right? That's like a director. Hey, gaze at her with kind, glittering eyes. That's what we need you to do right now. But they say it out loud.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly in that instance, it slows it down. And sort of like stretches out, maybe draws attention to it would be an interesting way to do it in a different way. I think it also just evokes the book, and is a nice evocation of the book.
There's another Russian a literary critic, and I didn't pull all this up beforehand because I'm just thinking about it now, but I think it's Victor Shklovsky, who talks about one of the purposes of art is to make the stone stony, is what he says. Essentially, to bring about like the nature of things by forcing us to pay attention to them, breaking us out of habitualization. He talks about sustaining our length of perception. Like, we just move through life, we don't pay a lot of attention to things, but one of the things that art does is force you to pay attention to something over a sustained period of time. So there is a way in which, like, slowing us down to the way that Natasha says that line is lengthening our perception of it. We take longer to pay attention to it now because there's words given to it.
Yeah, I mean, I like that take a lot. That's really cool.
Here's another one, just as a different way, and this is the same sort of thing happening, but now they've transitioned it into first-person narration. Natasha and Sonia, this is after Sonia's discovered the love letters from Anatol, and she's going to confront her friend. Natasha says, "Sonia, you're back." And then here we go. "And with the tender resolve that often comes at the moment of awakening, I embraced my friend. but noticing
Hmm.
Sonia's look of embarrassment, my face expressed confusion and suspicion. I mean, that's just, those are just like things like theoretically actors could do, right?
Right.
She
Yeah.
could embrace her with the tender resolve that comes at the moment of awakening, and then notice that Sonia looks embarrassed and turn her face into confusion. Like the narration that they've kept is the stuff that actors can do. There's a lot of stuff in prose we have. Narration is a great way to do stuff in prose that's very hard to do in drama. But it seems like some of the narration they've kept is the stuff drama would be good at.
Yeah. Like, it'd be cool to see that.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you get this interesting question. Like, as a director, I approach that. And it's like, well, so then what do the actors do?
Right.
Do they replicate what they're describing? Do they do it differently than what they're describing? And how
Mhm.
do they do nothing at all and just turn to the audience and say what it is the character is doing? Like, how does the actual blocking action, gesture, facial expression interact with a line like that? With the tender resolve that often comes at the moment of awakening,
Yeah.
I embrace. So she says out loud, I embraced my friend. There's no stage directions. So what do they embrace? Or
Right.
does the embrace just happen in the description?
Mm-hmm. Or as this play often does, are they on completely opposite sides of the stage?
Right.
Singing to each other from across the audience.
Yes.
Yeah. What opportunities are open to you as a result of those narrative lines being in there?
Another great example of that. Pierre is confronting Anatole about the whole thing. He's finally, he stepped in and he's trying to get Anatole to leave. Pierre narrates, my face, already pale, becomes distorted by fury. I seize you. Now he's narrating in the
Now it's
second
you.
person.
Yep.
I
Mm-hmm.
seize you by the collar with
Yep.
my big hands and shake you from side to side until your face shows a sufficient degree of terror when I tell you I must talk to you.
Yep.
I mean, that could be a stage direction.
For sure. Yeah.
And again, the questions become, does the actor actually do these things? Does he grab his collar like he's describing? Does his face distort in fury? I mean, these are fascinating. The narration is used in a really interesting way here that I don't quite have a button on, but just fascinates me.
Yeah, for sure. I think it opens up so many cool opportunities of how to do that. Later on in that scene, Pierre narrates him pacing the room several times in silence. And that, like, having that in there is great because you can imagine that, but also that opens up the possibility that you don't have to, that you save your silence for much later in the play.
Yes.
So you have the ability to kind of tell a story without necessarily creating the embodied experience of it. So I think it just like opens up the door to so much creativity, and it matches the blistering pace of the musical. Again, the kind of like we're moving through words very quickly, which is often like also the experience of reading Tolstoy. So it
We
kind of
are,
captures
and
that.
you earlier you used the word frenetic, and it strikes me that the narration is the opposite of frenetic. Again, it
Mm-hmm.
slows us down, brings us back to a moment, and forces us to pay more attention to that moment. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what would make us pay more attention in this story. Pierre grabbing, like the actual actor grabbing the other actor by the collar and shaking him, or the description of that happening, because
Mm-hmm.
it's so, I mean, it's a moment that's so out of line with Pierre and his behavior. Here's a moment of narration from, this is just before that spoken line. So this is it. We're in it. Here we go. Pierre and Natasha, they're about to undergo whatever change it is that they undergo in this musical. We're here. Pierre narrates, she began to cry, and a greater sense of pity, tenderness, and love overflowed Pierre's heart. So notice the narration's now back to the third person. Overflowed
Yeah.
Pierre's heart. He felt the tears begin to trickle underneath his spectacles, and he hoped that no one would see. Then he talks to her. Now he's back into speaking in character. We won't speak of it anymore. We won't speak of it anymore, my dear. But one thing I beg of you, consider me your friend. And if you ever need help or simply to open your heart to someone, not now, but when your mind is clear, think of me. So that's spoken as a character in the lines. Now back to narration. Pierre grew confused. I don't even
Yeah.
know what that means. Pierre grew confused.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think the play has so many like pieces like that like leave you questioning more, leave you wondering more about these characters. Perhaps it leads people to go read War and Peace. But certainly beyond the like actual text of this play, the lived experience of being in the room with this play leaves you with so much to talk about, so much to experience. We are near the end of our time on this particular podcast to keep chatting about it, but would love the chance to keep talking about this play with all of you out there in the podcast land. You can find us out at the username at NoScriptPodcast on the socials that we are at. We also have a Gmail, noscriptpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on any of those sites. We'd love to keep talking about Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812, or any of the scripts from this season with all of you.
It's a great example because I have about 10 more things on my list, and Jackson's cutting me off.
I know.
Cutting me off.
I could see it. I could see the mourning in your eyes as I started
You jumped right in there as I got to Pierre, grew confused. I was like, we got to wrap this thing up. If you enjoyed this conversation, if you've enjoyed our season, this is a great season. I feel like as a group of plays, this season is among the strongest that we've done.
Yeah,
just a really incredible group. Recommend us to your family, your friends, anybody you know that likes theater, that likes these kinds of conversations. Send them our way. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places you get your podcast. Also on Facebook, link to the new episode there. Just click and play. We will be back with a new season somewhere around the start of the school year. Until then, I'm Jacob here with Jackson. Thanks for joining us for No Script, the podcast.